investment bit I want to touch on really. There's a real balancing act or chess game here, because pandemic could have hit financial performance of businesses. A lot of businesses will have been affected in the amount of work they were managing to get through. A lot of their clients may have shut down or had projects pulled from beneath them. So if you're doing a balance act with your financial performance, but then you're aware you've got all these investments to make your office and staff safe and feel able to come back. But then we've been talking about the cost savings from the services side. So there's a real, you're almost like, you look at it as this is a big investment to make, but you can offset some of that investment with the savings in the services. So from what seems that from day one, looks like a massive mountain of this is going to be spend and re-strategize. And there's actually, you know, you can get your small wins from your adjustment to your services and from these tweaks that will make that impact softer. And I think that's really, really important for people to be aware of, that it's not just a one-way street of spend, that this can be offset and this can be made more manageable.
The savings can, well, very good point. If you can make the savings and the significant on services, that can finance the loan to implement the others. So it's not affecting your services and all that sort of stuff, if you want to go down that way. But people will, you know, you've got 10 years leases. So if you save 5-10 grand on your services, that finances quite a big loan over 5 years, you know, and all that sort of stuff, or whatever, or 100 grand you can save on bigger offices, 200 grand in London. It's a lot of money.
John, are your conversations, I know he's popped off the screen, hopefully you can still hear me.
Sorry.
No, you're fine, you're fine. I was going to say...
You've expired, John.
It's had enough, he's gone. I'm actually really interested in what you said about the developer and student loan accommodation. Is there any conversations that you've had during pandemic time, so sort of maybe from January now, with developers or other people looking that have re-strategized or have put projects on hold and are now going back and that they are taking a financial hit? How's that working in your way?
Yeah, there's definitely some hesitancy. Literally day before yesterday we had a project put on hold, and it was, so there are two things. Firstly, the strategy of what the environment's got to be to make sure that people are coming back to work, and also to keep them at work. And from Gav's point of view, how many people will be coming back into the offices? Is it open plan? Is it more touchdown space? Do they need less space? And I'm thinking that's probably the way to go. And then secondly, at the moment, do you want to be the first one to implement something and then it's the wrong thing? We're just not through the pandemic in any way, but is it going to get worse or better? And are you going to strategize it first? Are you going to take those decisions and implement it, or are you going to wait and see what works for others, really?
And what are the impacts that are having to those projects on hold? Like, we all know there's going to be, you know, costs on delay or whatever. What is that particular client from experiencing?
It's going to go right up the tree, isn't it? So if it depends at what stage you're at, but if you've actually bought a building and you're going to refurb it, you sat on an asset that you're paying rent on and you don't really know what to do with it, or you've got to keep it pretty flexible to be letting in 6 months' time. A couple of the projects have been redesigned at the moment. Some people are just saying, well, I've got the building, I'm paying rent, I'm going to be paying rates in so many months, I've got to do something with it, so I've got to implement some sort of design strategy. And they're just taking the best of what the market's is advising them at the moment. The things that are on board at the moment that are actually coming to a head and coming to handover, there's not a great deal that's being implemented to leave the spaces flexible to the client, and then they're feeding back as to what their demands might be now for different use of spaces. So
they're quite receptive to letting that be flexible and then adapting it.
Yeah,
that's quite good. That's good.
They've got to be, haven't they? Yeah.
I think it's really interesting that we've touched on that nobody wants to be left behind and to be the last person to do this, especially from an employer or a landlord point of view. But there's a reluctance to be the first as well. So is that there's some kind of impasse where everybody's kind of just sitting around waiting for the first brave people that aren't with
it's a little bit like sustainability, wasn't it? You know, everybody wanted to implement sustainability, but what had the best from an owner's, developer's point of view, what had the best feedback? Did they want to be the first in there? Not particularly. Let's see what everybody else is doing, and then it just picks up a pace, and it'll be the same incremental approach, I think.
Yeah.
But it's obviously going to be a learning curve, isn't it? You know, people are going to make moves, make mistakes, learn from them. It's just going to evolve. I mean, there's no hard and fast, is there? You know, it's unprecedented, but people have got to make decisions and innovate, haven't they? So whoever takes the mark the quickest and goes with it, your top end developers are going to probably lead the way, aren't they, and start coming up with innovative ways, and the rest will follow.
One thing I was going to ask was, we've got a couple of projects that are maybe going into Cat A, and where do you think that the developers will be going on the Cat A? On central plant, will that be, are we going to look at more zone systems? Are we going to look at smaller plant but more of it? Where do you go on that?
I think
one thing that they also picked up on was that potentially, this was more to do, I picked this up yesterday, but more to do with a care home. They were saying that in the care home, for every visitor and each member of staff arriving every day, leaving every day, that they would be checked, so that there would be temperature checks. They may even be swabbed. And this would happen in perhaps lots of service industries. That they'll have that, like going to site at the moment. You know, you could be heat checked, fill in a questionnaire. That people are requiring rooms to carry that out. They're losing a bedroom, so that there's an area to carry this sort of thing out. That's another consideration going forward. Testing
areas and other spaces required.
Yeah, and in bigger buildings, does it become part of reception? You know, is everybody tested going in the building?
Like a holding area type thing.
In
essence, yeah.
I think the bigger landlords in London, they've got concierges will take that on, won't they?
Mm. Yeah.
If that's the norm for a landlord like me in the regions and smaller units, individual tenants.
No. That must be similar though for landlords in, you know, Leeds, Manchester, Birmingham. You know, they've got there's large offices in those.
Oh, of course there is. Yeah.
You know, just sort of thinking about like Centre Point and City Square and places like that. They must be able to support that with their reception spaces.
The landlord will, because their reception's in their service charge, isn't it? Sort of thing. That's an additional thing as a landlord that I'd be doing to reassure the tenants, right? And I wouldn't see it increasing the service charge too much in a bigger building. That's a no-brainer for me, like to ease the mental anguish of people coming back to work. But for maybe, it's dependent on revenue you're getting from your office investment, isn't it? For me, it'd be uneconomical to provide a person to do that and expect every tenant to pay the cost of it.
Yeah,
that's great.
Where do you think, Gav, on the Cat A? Yeah,
I think a big one. Obviously, we've touched on the occupancy side of it's key, isn't it? Because that drives the design side, doesn't it? So, if new guidance is going to start coming out about, I don't know, is it 1 per 10 anymore? You know, are we going to start reducing occupancies, or is it going to stay the same, but it's going to be more agile, rota-based, you know, systems? But I think from a ventilation perspective, I think like Alan touched on, you know, it'll be kind of negating any recirculation, you know, no recirc in terms of heat recovery. It could be full fresh air systems maybe, with a lot more filtration in there. I mean, pathogens in airborne pathogens can remain in the air for about up to 3 to 4 hours, you see. So I think there's going to be a new design emphasis on ventilation systems. You look at things like comfort conditioning, Alan, you know, just AC type cassettes, they're recirc, aren't they? The recirc. So will that kind of move away?